Hello and welcome to ADHD Support Talk Radio. My name is Tara McGillicuddy and I am the host of ADHD Support Talk Radio. I am also an adult ADD and ADHD productivity coach and the founder and director of ADDclasses.com. And at ADDclasses.com, we provide virtual support and education to people affected by ADD and ADHD. We offer free webinars and we have an extensive ADD audio library with more than 150 hours of courses. You can learn more about ADDclasses.com by going to the website www.addclasses.com. And I do have a couple of announcements to make. If you listened to me on my special podcast last week, I was talking about a new online community that I've just launched. You can learn more about that by going to the website patreon.com/ADHD support. And there you're going to have access to some of the webinars from our ADD audio library, some of our videos from the ADHD Awareness Expo, and some tips from our guests. So after our guests are on the regular show, they're going to give us some tips that are going to be exclusively available to members of the Patreon community. So with that, I would like to welcome back Jonathan Carroll to ADHD Support Talk Radio. In just a moment, we're going to be talking about sleep and ADHD. But before we get started, Jonathan, can you let our listeners know a bit about yourself and how they can get in touch with you after the show?
Great. First of all, Happy New Year, Tara. Thank you for having me on again. It's always great to do your show. You can find out more about me on my webpage, which is ADHDguru.com. I've recently launched a podcast. We'll call it the second best ADHD podcast behind the one I'm on now. We call that the ADHD Guru Podcast. You can also find me on Twitter under that name. You can call me at area code 877-398-2343. Or you can shoot me an email to Jonathan at ADHDEFcoach.com.
Okay, so let's get started talking about sleep and ADHD. This is such a huge issue. I know I have people on, not a lot, but this is something that I can have guests on probably once a month, and there'd still be new information or people that would still benefit from discussing sleep and ADHD. So, Jonathan, where do you want to get started when it comes to sleep and ADHD?
Well, you know, I am an adult with ADHD, and sleep is a big issue for me. And I think it is for, like you, I'm an ADHD coach, so I work with a variety of clients, and sleep challenges are probably one of the biggest things I hear. And it's really kind of one of those things where, you know, with ADHD is a disorder of regulation, and in sort of the simplest way of putting it. You know, what I find is that a lot of people I know with ADHD don't do a really good job of regulating certain activities during the day, and then that carries over to night. You know, like, for example, perhaps drinking too much caffeine, eating the wrong things, you know, could be one of a million different reasons why we have trouble sleeping. So I really believe it's important for my clients and for anybody with ADHD is to really look at all the activities that go on around you and then see maybe if you need to change some of those, and that might help you sleep better.
Mm-hmm. And what are some, I know you mentioned caffeine, what are some of the other big activities or things that people are doing that may be interfering with their sleep?
Watching things late at night. There's thoughts that televisions or iPads or computers or, let's face it, there's a screen within 6 inches of our nose probably 1,000 times a day. Mm-hmm. That type of light sometimes may convince your brain it's still daytime, and then that can really throw off your sleep. So that's one example. Eating later at night, maybe eating spicier foods, drinking, certain, obviously caffeine, but maybe real sugary drinks, things like that, can impact that as well. It's funny because if I have caffeine anytime after about 3:30 or 4 o'clock, I'm up all night. And yet I know people that can have a full cup of coffee at 10 o'clock at night and pass right out. So it impacts each one of us differently. So you have to really become a student of yourself in these types of situations and see how that impacts you.
Yeah, and you talked about TV and screens. I think it's not just the light from the screen and whatever else, the energy that the screens are sending out. It's what you're doing online and what you're watching. And I think one of the worst things for people to do is to be watching or listening or paying attention to the news, like anytime around bedtime. I think probably any time at all because the news is so negative. But the 11 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news that, we all used to watching, it's probably one of the worst things to put on because that negativity, it's going to stimulate your brain. And once you fall asleep, you're probably going to have bad dreams and have poor sleep anyway. So that's like one of the huge ones too. I like to say stop watching the news altogether, stop paying attention to the news, but that's probably not going to happen. Like I just say stop watching and paying attention to it towards the end of your day, like at least several hours before bedtime.
That's a great point. I think that anytime we force our brains into any sort of like stressful situation, watching the news, if you're a sports fan like I am, watching a game, who knows? You could throw a bunch of things in there. Having those really uncomfortable conversations sometimes before you want to go to bed can all impact that. So, it's again back to the regulation, when you're ready to go to bed, what are the things that you're doing to help facilitate falling asleep? And again, it could be something as simple as, not, you said watching the news or, really tabling important things for the next morning when you get up. I unfortunately am an impulsive person, and sometimes when there's something important, I can't wait to get my head wrapped around it. Mm-hmm. But doing that at 11 o'clock is probably not the best time to do it. It probably needs to wait till the morning. So there's those kinds of things as well.
And work, I think, is a big one. I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs, people who own their own businesses, but I think even just people who leave work at 5 or 6 o'clock at night, if you're still thinking about work at 11 o'clock, that's going to, have, an impact on your sleep. Like, I'm like you. I don't like the word impulsive, but I guess that kind of describes me. But I'm also a night owl. But if I start doing work at 11 o'clock at night, not only am I going to lose track of time, next thing I know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. If there's something stress-related or even something fun and exciting, a project I'm working on, that's going to stimulate my brain and make it hard for me to go to sleep. So there's so many things that we're doing that are just normal everyday activities that can really negatively impact our sleep.
Right, and I also look at too is like, some of the other areas I look at is, are you physically active? Are you getting out? And, I think that, during the day, are you sitting still or are you getting around and moving? Now, again, some of our jobs don't allow us to go to the gym for 3 to 4 hours a day, but, are you getting up and taking a walk? Are you, hydrating yourself enough with, water? I should say, instead of coffee, are you having water? Are you eating at appropriate times? Are you eating the right things? It's always like that sort of the ounce of prevention thing. What are things that you do at 10 a.m. can impact you at 11 p.m. Yeah. And understanding those types of things. So I'm always really a believer too in like regulating and regimenting your day. Making sure that you have the things that you want to do lined up so that way you get them done, as opposed to some people I know that will fly by the seat of their pants, and then all of a sudden it's time for bed. It's like, oh my God, I didn't get this done, this done, this done, and this done. Some of that early planning would really help. Some of the planning of meals and things like that would help as well.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up this good thing about moving your body during the day. Yeah, exercising for 30, 60, 90 minutes at the gym or working out is great, but also getting up and moving your body a few times during the hour. It's amazing that when you do that, how it affects sleep. Like the more you move, the better you sleep. So like you said, what you do at 10 o'clock affects your sleep.
Right, and that's something I find a lot of people, again, with the hustle and bustle of life, it's like if you're not going to prepare yourself for something, then it's going to end up impacting you in a variety of ways. So again, I really think it's so important for any of us, ADHD or non-ADHD, like, think of your day as like, you want to go to bed at night tired. You want to go to bed at night effectively tired. And the way that you get there is by really regimenting and planning and eating properly and so on and so forth. And those kinds of things really, really help with that type of the growth and getting better with sleep. I mean, I can't tell you, like, I think that, there's a lot of in my life, and I'll speak for myself personally. I have sleep challenges, and how many times I've had a bad night's sleep and get up the next day and then probably make a decision that's not great because I'm not 100% sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important that you really focus on getting that sleep and and shutting it down for a while, so that way you're more effective the next day, kind of.
Yeah. And I know I talk to a lot of people with ADD, and they're like, oh, I can thrive on 4 hours sleep, 5 hours sleep. And I'm going to tell you, that's BS. We all really need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. 4 hours of sleep, unless you're Superman or Superwoman, that doesn't do it. You may think you're thriving. You may think you're doing well, but we all need 4 hours of sleep. And I'm one of these people that does not use the word need a lot unless you really need it. I think that's a big one. I don't know if you work on that with your clients who will say, oh, no, I don't. I do okay without any sleep. And I think that's BS, as I said.
No, I think you make a good point. I think that anybody that tells you that, as I always like to tell prospective clients, if somebody tells you something that sounds too good to be true, you probably want to run for the hills. Mm-hmm. And I tell I tell my clients, look, it's is there a certain night where you may not get a lot of sleep and have a great day? Yeah, but that's more rare than those people that effectively plan out their days and look at what they do. I think, again, our bodies really, and I become more and more of a believer, because I learned a lot of stuff studying myself. I really believe our bodies are constantly talking to us. And sometimes we choose not to listen to our bodies. If something hurts or if something doesn't feel right, that sometimes we sit there and we're like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. Well, no, I think your body tells you mm-hmm. things based on the way you are. And I have to tell you, I know that sleep is a major one. And, if you're tired at 2 p.m. consistently, your body's probably telling you that your sleep is not giving you enough rest for the rest, for a successfully full day. And so I think you have to listen to your body. And I got to tell you, it's becoming a bit more and more apparent to me. And I think it's becoming more and more apparent to a lot of us that, the less we listen to our bodies, the worse we're going to feel. Mm-hmm. And, I think that it should tell you something. I think with ADHD, sometimes we're forced into a world where we better be stimulated in one way or the other, mm-hmm. because usually if we're bored, we're not fully engaged. But I think at the same time if you find yourself consistently feeling the same way, you got to look at everything else that you're doing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are either not aware of how essential, how important sleep is for mental and physical health, or even if they're aware, they've kind of pushed it aside. But there's so many studies out there that are showing people that sleep is so important, and the more sleep you get, the better. And when you're not getting enough sleep or enough quality sleep, that it's going to really affect your well-being. And with ADHD, our brain's already working differently to begin with, that, when we get better sleep or more sleep, we're going to be more focused. We're going to be more productive. So I think it's really important. Sleep's one of those things that you start adding a little bit more sleep and better sleep to your life, that you feel better. I mean, if you have weight issues, I've talked to people like Dr. Roberto Olivardia, who's been on here and is a sleep specialist, that he had sleep apnea, got his sleep treated, and out of nowhere, he just dropped, not out of nowhere, he just dropped 10 pounds without doing anything else but changing his sleep. So, I mean, sleep is just so essential and so important, but it's one of those things that we often, I think not just people with ADHD, everyone, we tend to kind of not pay attention and not focus on getting enough sleep.
Right, and there's always been the research about diet for ADHD. As a matter of fact, in Dr. Barkley's latest report that's sitting on my desk, I'm kind of looking as we're talking, he came out with the article, The Role of Diet Nutrients in the Treatment of ADHD, which is fantastic. But I broaden that to, you feel how you eat. And, if you're eating not so well, that's going to translate to you not mm-hmm. feeling well further down the road. So I think it's very important that you sit there and you look at those kinds of things, and you look at how those things impact you, and what you do to, what you do to help facilitate, your diet, again, how hydrated you are. And I keep repeating myself, but it's so important that you understand all these things are interchangeable, that diet, that everything. And once you do that, I think your sleep will definitely improve. So I think that's really, if you take nothing else away from what I'm telling you today, I think the most important part of all of this is look at yourself, look at what you're doing. If you're having trouble sleeping, really take out a journal, write down what you're eating, what you're drinking, what you're doing, how you're doing it, those kinds of things. And think to yourself, is there anything in these factors that I can change that might impact and allow me to get better sleep? And that's probably what the best advice I can give you or any of my clients is that.
Yeah, so pay attention to your day. And also, who are you talking to during the day? In addition to what you're eating and watching and, all that, who's in your life? And, they might be stressing you out, which, may be getting in the way of you falling asleep at night.
Oh, so you mean I don't have to talk to my mom anymore? That means that I'll get more sleep if I don't communicate with her and talk to her.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if she's listening, which if she could figure out how to find a podcast, I'd be amazed.
Well, no, it's not that I don't talk to my mom anymore. I found our communication style is different. So, it's not as stressful. But yeah, that's a big one, whether it's your mother, whether it's a boss. It's how you interact with people too. If you're letting them suck the energy out of you, then it's going to affect your sleep and well-being.
Right. And then I want to bring up one other point, if I have a second, is talking about some people will go to the pharmacology route, Xanax, Ambien, those kinds of things. Again, obviously I'm not a doctor, and it's not really my call, and some people do those things. And so maybe if it is a medical issue, like talking about with sleep apnea or something, talking to your doctor, talking to a qualified professional that might have ways of helping you better sleep is something you can certainly explore as well. So there's options besides what you do in your own way to help you kind of regulate your sleep.
Yeah. No, and sleep issues like sleep apnea and other sleeping disorders are very common with ADHD. So that definitely might be something to look into, is to have a sleep study done. Because I know, as I said before, Dr. Olivardi has been on the show a few times and done classes at ADD classes. And I can't remember the numbers, but it's pretty prevalent. People with ADHD also have diagnosable sleep disorders that can be treated.
Right. Yeah. And that's right. That's part of it too. So again, part of it is try to self-diagnose yourself from a standpoint of evaluating your day, evaluating what you're doing, those kinds of things. And then part of it is, if it's a concern that's not as easy as that quick of a fix, or not, I should say quick fix, but a change in lifestyle, then it's probably a conversation for you and a medical professional.
Yeah. And be patient. I remember one of the things that used to keep me up at night is I'd be stressing that, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get enough sleep the next day, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to be able to drive to work. So my own thoughts would keep me up. So I've kind of really, my sleep's improved. And, when I have one of those nights where I'm having more trouble falling asleep because life happened, I'm more realistic. I'm like, okay, I'll be okay if there's one day where I don't get enough sleep. I'll get back to it. I won't keep myself up all night. So I think we brought up a lot of great stuff today. Before we get going, Jonathan, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave people with today? And could you make sure you give out your contact information? Yeah,
first of all, again, thanks for having me. It's always we always do so well at these, so it's always great company and great conversations. I think that the most important thing is not to ignore your lack of sleep or think that it's just the way it is. Try to find ways of potentially fixing it through, as we talked about, lifestyle changes, speaking to a medical professional and things like that. So that's really what I would leave you on. Let me throw my contact information at you one more time. ADHDguru.com is my website. It's also the name of my podcast. Like I said, second best podcast on ADHD. You can find me on Twitter at ADHDguru, and that's YouTube as well. You can send me an email to Jonathan, that's JONATHAN at ADHDEFcoach.com. Call me at 877-398-2343. And you can find me on Facebook at ADHD and Executive Functioning Coach. Okay. Thank you so much, Jonathan Carroll. And Jonathan will be giving a special adult or ADHD sleep tip over on our Patreon community. So stop by patreon.com/ADHD support to hear Jonathan's special sleep tip. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day